Hey friends, I'm Glenn Thomas, and in this video I just want to show you quickly what I'm doing here with a live mix, how I'm getting some good energy and punch from my drums while also maintaining a good tone and feel in my bass as well. So let's take a listen here to just the instrumental bed that I've got for these vocal tracks that I've got muted currently. It's kind of a mixture, hybrid mix of some acoustic instruments, some cajon, some acoustic guitar, some violin, along with some electric guitar, Roland SPD-SX for some samples and things like that. But specifically focusing on the drum bus and the bass. Just kind of paying attention to what I've got going here. Let's solo these for a quick second. Great, yeah, so you can hear I've got a bit of energy going there. So let's take a look at what I'm doing. First and foremost, on the cajon, let's take a look at what we've got here. Let me expand these tracks a bit so we can see them. There we go, maybe a touch more here. There we go. Let's take a look at these effects. We've got the CLA mix hub, and for the most part, just doing a little bit of compression. Looks like EQ, boosting some of that low frequencies in a bell, but also rolling off with the filter on the top and the bottom slightly. So that's good to pay attention to, followed then by a little bit of limiting just to ensure that I don't clip. But I'm not actually boosting it any from there. Also then a slight bit, what is that, 7% mix of just a little bit of reverb. This actually was tracked outdoors in a completely open space, so it didn't have any ambience to speak of, so I just gave it a touch. In that kind of a case, you don't want to, this will also be synced to film, and so in that case, with it being an outdoor tracking and film, you don't want to add ambience that would seem unnatural for the place it's at, but just to give it some width, because if you notice here, I left it on some good stereo width, and I actually might consider taking that a little higher. We'll have to see. Anyway, so those are the things I've got in the cajon. Let's take a look here at the SPD-SX, and again, that's just running some good drum samples on it. And so again, mix hub here, doing a little bit of pushing in the mid highs, cutting off the lows, and no compression happening there to speak of. But then on the drum bus itself, again, the mix hub, and then we've got also the API 2500 stereo. But if you notice here, it's a fairly aggressive compressor, but if you notice here at the top, I've actually got the mix of the plugin down to 30%. So you're hearing 70% uncompressed or only slightly compressed drums from there. FabFilter Pro R again, and again, just adding a little bit more, but this time with a lot more width and a mix of 10%. So again, just a slight bit of ambience to it, which helps definitely just with stereo width. That's one of the biggest things with this, is I just wanted to add some up in the higher sections, especially some good ambience there that seemed natural to an outdoor tracking. So then from there, we move into the bass. And so what I've done here is I've got the actual bass track, and then you can see below it, I've got bass dist. This is a distorted bass. And what I've done is I've just bussed this bass directly into this bass track here. And then I have processed them slightly different. So the first one, the main bass, has, again, the mix hub. I ran this entire track, in this entire project, every track has the mix hub on it, just as a test, and that's why my CPU use is also quite high. That's also because I'm doing a screen record as well. But anyway, so for this bass, it looks like I'm doing a little bit of compression here. I've also put the compression before the EQ, boosting up some low frequencies down sub 100. But above 50, so somewhere right down in there. Looks like that's about all I'm doing on this one, except I'm rolling out some of the really lows, 18. So it looks like we could actually probably take that up to about 25 or so. We'll leave it right about there. Should be good. Then this one's going into a multi-band compressor, and here's where the magic starts to happen. So what I've done is I've actually run a trigger, a side chain, if you will, from the drum bus into this bass track, and this is also on the distorted bass as well, as you can see here. So I've got that. Also on the distorted bass, I've got this multi-band compression happening up in the top, just to make sure it doesn't get too aggressive. But on this main track, we've just got a touch of a boost, about a dB of a boost at 100 hertz. But this is going to duck then at the same time. What's our range on this? 6 dB. So every time the drum bus hits at this specific range, which I have external sidechain going from there, anytime we get this little range getting kicked from the kick drum, essentially, the bass ducks there. So it just gives the kick drum some space and some energy, and it works really well. Again, doing the exact same thing in the distorted bass. Let's just take a listen to the basses by themselves. So we'll take these and we'll just solo these out. Turn these off and we'll solo these again. Take a listen to this. So, and then if I go here, hopefully my computer will handle this. There we go. You can see, so when the kick or a low tom or something like that is hitting, it's actually going ahead and ducking that out. And it looks like it's doing it fairly aggressively. I could probably bring my threshold up a little bit more, but I've liked the way it sounded, so that's pretty good. I didn't want to affect too much of the subs, so I'm just going to leave that where it's at. But it's been a really nice, helpful thing just to be able to get that out of the way so that the kick drum has that space to really punch through, because 100 hertz for a kick drum is just that nice punchy space. So that's real good. Again, bass tone is an important thing too, and one thing I like to do then is to use the max bass from Waves just to get some of these harmonics up in the upper section. I'm using, I think this was just, the preset called Light. So I don't want to add too much, just because otherwise you start to muddy up your mix, especially in a fairly busy mix like this. But this gives just a little bit of extra harmonics up for the systems that may not have quite the sub capacity that others may. And overall, these two things together make a world of difference when you're trying to get your drums to stick out, but your bass to also have a good tone and be round and full. So take a listen again what this sounds like. Yeah, I love how that sounds. Let's do this real quick just for fun. Let's solo these all out and then turn off all the effects on them. This is going to sound pretty bad, but this is what we came from. Pretty bare, pretty raw. That's just straight tracking. Let's turn those effects back on. That makes a big difference. Same thing for the mix. Where we came from raw tracking. Effects back on. Oh yeah, that makes such a big difference. So those are some of the tips that I would say. Take a look at dynamic EQ and see if you can't sidechain it to your bass. A lot of consoles can do this. A lot of DAWs you can do this in. A lot of plugins. So hopefully this was helpful. If it was, I would love it if you give me a thumbs up on this. If it wasn't, I'd love to hear why not. And also if you would consider subscribing, love that. And if it was helpful, share it with your friends and pass this along. Hopefully you're doing well during this time of COVID-19 and all that. Hopefully you're making some good music at home, and I will see you on the next one.